Good morning, good afternoon, and good night, whatever time you're watching this. Thank you for joining us today. I am Jared Johnson, the Jared J, here once again with my guest, Talmadge Roger Bernardo III.
Hello, everybody.
Thank you for joining us once again. Talmadge, thank all of you for joining us. We're going to stick with the National Basketball Association topic, and today we're going to do our top 10 point guards in NBA history. I don't know Talmadge's list. He does not know mine.
I know some of it.
Yeah, I was going to say, he can get a look at mine. I guess I can look at your notepad if I wanted to play like that. Some of our lists, we've had a decent overlap. Yeah. Some of them have been very different. So we will see how this goes. And as we've said numerous times, these are our opinions. Some great players get left off. You may disagree with the order. We're going to try to make it make sense as to why we have people where they are ranked. Talmadge, why don't you kick us off? Give us your number 10 and your number 9, please.
My number 10 is the great Stevie Nash. Especially for that era of basketball. I think the reason why basketball is the way it is today is largely because of him and the coaches he had in Dallas and in Phoenix that kind of let him be himself.
Yeah.
Free-flowing offense. What made him so great, too, is such a great shooter. When you can pass it and shoot it and become that double threat, it opens up really the offense for your entire team. And he was able to do that, not to mention the fact that he won multiple MVPs. I don't tell Shaq he gets upset every time, but he did win.
He still hadn't gotten over it. He admits publicly he hadn't gotten over it.
I'm not saying he always deserved them, but he did win.
He did win. What, did he win back-to-back?
Yes, he did.
I think he did,
yes,
didn't he?
Yeah. Yes, he did. So Stevie Nash. My number 9 is the great winner, Bob Cousy. To be the point guard on all those teams with the Celtics, you have to give him credit for that. He was actually one of the first, if not the first, pure quote-unquote point guard. I'm not even sure we had that term before him.
Maybe not.
We might have. I'm not that old. I'm old, but I'm not that old.
If not, he was one of the first
but he was,
sure.
he was one of the first. So for that alone, the passing. Obviously, I didn't see him play, but you hear things, you hear things, you see footage, and he could clearly pass the basketball, shoot a little bit, understood how to run a team. So the quintessential point guard, especially for his time. So my number 9 is Bob Cousy.
Very good, very good. Off to a great start. I'm going to do my 10, 9, 8, and 7.
Okay.
My number 10 is a guy, several of these guys on some of these lists, you could just call them by their nickname. This one, again, the Glove, Gary Payton. 6'4", 180 pounds. Played 17 seasons, 9-time All-Star, All-Rookie 90-91, led the league in steals 95-96, Defensive Player of the Year 95-96, career averages of 16.3 points, 3.9 rebounds, 1.8 steals, and 6.7 assists per game. Not a mind-blowing assist number, but he could run a team. He could run an offense. He could score when he needed to. My opinion, I'd say he's the best defensive guard of all time. In a previous video, I said I think Michael Jordan's the best defensive shooting guard. If there's one guy I might rank ahead of him, it would be Gary Payton. A true lockdown defender, would get in your face, played passing angles pretty well, but he mostly was just suffocating and on the ball. That's why I have him on my list. And that's why he's at number 10, because as great as he was on defense, most of these other guys I have ranked were better kind of at more aspects of the game, which is why he's my number 10. Number 9, we have our first overlap. Steve Nash.
All right.
6'3", 195-pounder, played 18 seasons. I'll admit, I didn't thinking back on his career, I didn't think it was that long.
I don't know. I would have thought that either, yeah.
I would have guessed 14 to 15. I knew he played for a while, but yeah. 18 seasons, 8-time All-Star, led the league in assists 5 times.
Wow. Pretty
darn impressive. He was a back-to-back league MVP, as Talmadge has alluded to. Career averages of 14.3 points, 3.0 rebounds, 8.5 assists per game. Talmadge said a lot of it, just talking about the dual threat. And he was a guy that defenses had to fear, because when you saw him coming up the floor, you didn't know. He could pull up off the dribble and rip a 3 in your face. He could pump fake and blow past you. And then at the last minute, toss it to Amari Stoudemire for a dunk. The guy was great at controlling the flow of the game. And, yeah, just the shooting ability was so dangerous coming off of pick and rolls. and swinging the ball around. And then they would sometimes kick it back to him because he was such a good shooter.
And I'll throw this in there. I forgot to mention when I was talking about him, but when he played with Dallas, his kinship with Dirk is legendary. I mean, I know there's been other dynamic duos. I'm not saying they were the best of all time, but you could clearly see when they played together.
They had a chemistry,
they knew what each other was thinking.
And there was the respect of, let me get Steve the ball. Let me set Dirk up. You could tell that's the way they played.
And if you remember, Don Nelson, after he left, I can't remember if he was fired or he quit the Mavericks or whatever happened, but he said really and truly, the day Steve Nash left, in his mind, he had already stopped coaching the Magic.
Wow.
Even though he stayed a couple of more years, because they got Jason Terry, and good player, but he said once Nash left, his heart wasn't in it.
The team was not the same.
Yeah.
Well, that's a heck of a compliment to Steve Nash, not so much to Jason Terry. To your point, Jason Terry was a very good player. We're not trying to insult him. All right, my number 8 is Isaiah Thomas, the one that played for the Pistons for his entire career.
Gotcha.
There was another Isaiah Thomas. It was pretty good, but we're talking about the Pistons Isaiah Thomas.
And we're talking about a top 10 list, so that kind of tells you.
I kind of figured that should clear it up, and let me be real clear. 6'1", 180 pound, played 13 seasons, 12-time All-Star, All-Rookie 81-82, 2-time All-Star Game MVP, led the league in assists 84-85, Finals MVP in 1990. And you may know this, but a lot of people probably do not. He, to this day, holds the NBA record for the highest three-point percentage in a finals series.
If I did know that, I forget. It seems like I did, but it's not something I would have remembered.
It's not something that gets talked about much. But in an era that we've talked about before, where they didn't always shoot a lot of threes, that year that he won Finals MVP and they beat a very good Portland Trailblazers team, he shot 68.8%, 11 of 16 three-pointers for that series.
Wow.
Career averages of 19.2 points, 3.6 rebounds, 1.9 steals, and 9.3 assists per game. The points and the assists alone. 9.3 assists over 13 seasons.
That's phenomenal.
19.2 points. Phenomenal. The guy was a scorer. One of the better crossovers. Could take you off the dribble.
Before we called it a crossover.
Before everybody called it a crossover. He could carve people up, but also a very unselfish passer.
Yes.
Loved getting the ball to the Mark Aguires and the Joe Dumarses and the Bill Lambiers, but
don't forget Adrian Dantley.
And they
shortchange him.
Honestly, thank you. I did forget him, and I should not have. Kelly Tripucka played with them for a while too.
Don't steal my name.
Adrian Dantley and Kelly Tripucka. Isaiah, phenomenal player. He's my number 8. And my number 7, I have my first current player, and that is Mr. Chris Paul. 6 foot, 175 pounder. He's in his 19th season. 12-time All-Star, Rookie of the Year 05-06. Led the league in assists 5 times. He's led the league in steals 6 times, which is an NBA record. He is currently 3rd in career assists and 3rd in career steals.
Okay.
His statistics for this season thus far, 8.9 points, 3.8 rebounds, 7.2 assists per game. I realize that doesn't sound phenomenal. He's accepted a role with the Golden State team where he's just kind of playing within the flow. But he's averaging 7.2 assists. He's not the starting pure point guard. Right. The guy still can play. Career averages 17.8 points, 4.5 rebounds, 2.1 steals, and 9.4 assists per game. My opinion, a great all-around game.
Yes.
Especially for a 6-footer. Another guy that can break you down off the dribble. Not what I'd call a deadly three-point shooter, but when he needs to hit one, I'm not going to bet against him.
And it's gotten better than people think.
Right. Yeah, his athleticism early on was what you focused on, and the throwing the lobs to Blake Griffin, that was kind of their thing that they did.
And the mid-range shooting.
And yeah. So Chris Paul, definitely, in my opinion, one of the best. In fact, I would consider him number 7. All right, Talmadge, why don't you give us your 8, 7, 6, and 5?
My number 8 is Mr. Jason Kidd. The closest thing to I would call a traditional quintessential point guard, besides maybe the guy you just mentioned in recent years.
Okay.
Good size, great defender. Wasn't a great shooter in the beginning of his career, but actually toward the end of his career, his three-point shooting was a big part of why he was still in the league.
Yes.
Not a fan of him as a coach, but it's not a coaching list, so we'll go on to number
Topic for another day, perhaps.
And then we'll go on to number 7, the guy you just mentioned, Mr. Chris Paul. And these were very difficult because I could have flip-flopped these easily. But I think, again, with Chris Paul, I just admire the fact that when I think of him, I just think of bulldog. I think of tenacity. I just think of, and it's odd. He's never won a championship. He's only been to the championship series one time. But when I think of him, I just think winner, leader, champion. And he's not.
Right.
But when you watch him play, any team he's on, he's the leader of that team.
But he's always the leader, and he will do whatever he has to do to win.
Exactly.
So while he hasn't won a title, when you watch him play, I don't disagree. You watch him play, you can tell, stats aside, he's out there to win. If he needs to score 45, okay. If he needs to score 0 and help him win, he's going to play just as hard.
That's
so,
what
yeah,
he
I
does.
agree with that.
And so I respect him a ton for that. Number 6, and again, you could definitely make this guy a lot higher, but all these lists are so difficult. I'm going with John Stockton.
Oh, yeah.
He could have scored more,
Yeah.
but he had Karl Malone. He had Jeff Hornacek. He had before that Jeff Malone. So
Yeah.
he had scorers on that team.
Dan Barley at one point. No. I'm thinking of Phoenix and Hornacek right there.
Same part of the
Getting
country
off
a little
topic.
bit.
I'm
but
getting
yeah.
off topic here, yeah.
But Stockton, I mean, how can you not? When you look at steals, when you look at assists,
Mm-hmm.
and when you look at just running a team, you could argue that he's the best. So,
could.
again, anybody who's mad that Stockton's number 6 on my list, you have a right to be because he could very easily be higher than that. And you want me to go number 5?
Yeah, go ahead and do
well?
your number 5.
And number 5, this is the guy that I've earned respect for as time has gone on, one you've already mentioned, and that's Isaiah Thomas.
Yeah.
I don't think I appreciated Isaiah Thomas as much as I should have when he was actually playing. But when you look back at him now, if Isaiah Thomas were playing, I know we keep saying this, but with some of these players, it's so true. If he were playing today, I don't know if he'd be guardable. I really don't. Because he can handle the ball with the best of them. He could long range shoot. He could clutch shoot. He could mid-range shoot. He was a leader as well.
Oh, yeah.
Any team he was on, he took pride in. You knew he was going to die for the Detroit Pistons.
Oh, yeah.
That's everything you'd want from a leadership position. So, again, I thought about putting him higher, seriously.
Yeah.
But love him as a player and didn't love him as a player when he played.
Yeah, it's interesting how he's earned your respect. Sometimes as time goes on, people forget how good a player he is. You've grown to appreciate him more since his retirement, it sounds like. Yeah,
he's one of my favorites now, and I hated him when he played.
I was not, not a big fan of him because that Pistons team just kind of irritated me. They swept the Lakers in the finals one year, and Magic's my favorite player, so that just irritated me. But
I get it.
They were a very good team, and Isaiah's a great player.
I know we have to get off track, but I'm going to get off track just a little bit. What would have happened if Anthony Mason would have played for the Lakers?
Oh, man.
That's another story for another day.
Another story
for
another
those of you
day.
who have watched some of our previous episodes, you understand what that's all about. But if you haven't, go back and watch.
Yeah, as I say, they're available for you to go back and watch. That's I kind of like that. We might be on to something else. All right, I'm going to do my number 6 and number 5. Number 6, another overlap, Jason Kidd. 6'4", 205-pounder. He did play 19 seasons. 10-time All-Star. Co-Rookie of the Year, 94-95 with...
I don't know.
Grant Hill.
Oh, yeah, I should have known that.
I was about to say, it's one of the only times in history that I can remember having two guys, and that just speaks to how great they both were. Although, I've always wondered, do either one of them or both of them secretly kind of hate that? Like, man, y'all could have just voted me.
You know they think. They won't say it.
They won't say it publicly, but I wonder if both of them think, nothing, I'm Rookie of the Year that year. Anyway, led the league in assists 5 times. He's currently second in career steals, second in career assists, 107 career triple-doubles, career averages of 12.6 points, 6.3 rebounds, 1.9 steals, 8.7 assists per game. Talman's mentioned a lot about him. His three-point shooting greatly improved later in his career. Early in his career, baseline to baseline, he might have been the fastest guy in the league.
I think he was. Maybe him or D. Brown. But
yeah. But Kidd was so great at ripping down a rebound and then throwing a length of the court pass. If he saw somebody leaking out, the ball was going there. The guy just wanted to win. And his scoring is not all that impressive, 12.6 per game. but he made up for it by averaging over 6 rebounds a game as a 6'4" point guard and the 8.7 assists and just doing what needed to be done to win. My number 5, we do have another overlap, and that is John Stockton.
Okay.
Like Talmadge said, it was hard for me not to put him higher. I will not argue too hard if you want to say he's the best point guard of all time. I might discuss it with you, but I mean, he is
You can make the
arguably,
argument,
I'll listen to anything, and you won't even have to argue that hard for me to say, no, I get what you're saying. 6'1", 170, 19 seasons, 10-time All-Star, led the league in steals twice, led the league in assists 9 consecutive seasons.
Yeah.
And he played in the era with Isaiah Thomas and another guy that might get mentioned later. And he still led the league in assists 9 consecutive seasons.
Another guy that will get mentioned later.
I was going to say, there's really, I already know if he will or not, and I'm pretty sure we can both agree. He does hold the NBA record for career assists with 15,806, career steals, 3,265. Career averages of 13.1 points, 2.7 rebounds, 2.2 steals, and 10.5 assists per game. The guy was just phenomenal. He was a great defender. I say Gary Payton, in my opinion, is the best defensive point guard ever. John Stockton's got to be in the conversation. He's got the career steals record. He was a guy that would pressure up on you. And real quick, I'll tell a story that I heard Chris Webber tell one time. When Webber was with Sacramento, I think it was in the playoffs one year. They were playing the Jazz. And Webber said, I just decided before the game, I'm going to lay Stockton out. It wasn't even anything personal. He just was like, that guy's kind of a pest to my guards. He's always up in their face. I'm just going to show him what type of game this is going to be. So early in the game, Webber set a pick, and he said, I laid him out. Like he said, Stockton hit the floor hard on his back. He said, I gained so much respect for John Stockton in that moment. He didn't get up whining. He didn't take a swing at me. He didn't say, Carl, did you see that? Go after him. He didn't cry to the refs. I reached out my hand. He took it, got up. I said, you okay? He said, yeah, man, good screen. He said, that guy earned my ultimate undying respect in that moment. So anyway, John Stockton, my number 5. Very tough not to put him higher, but that's where we have him. All right, we've reached the midway point on our list. We're going to take a moment, hear a word from one of our sponsors, and we'll be right back. Hello, my name is Montgomery the Apples III. Have you ever been to Saskatchewan? Neither have I. For that matter, I have never eaten raw quail or successfully navigated a frozen pond whilst barefoot, or outjumped a kangaroo. But perhaps one day I will be able to determine the barometric pressure in Denver, Colorado. I am Montgomery the Apples III, and these are my thoughts. Have a good day! And welcome back. Talmadge and I are still here. We're discussing our top 10 point guards in NBA history. We've both reached the halfway point on our list. Talmadge, why don't you give us your number 4 and your number 3?
All right, my number 4, and this one was a challenge because some folks have him listed as a 2 guard because he played both. But this is where I put Jerry West.
Oh, okay.
You talked about him a lot in the previous video on your 2 guard list, so there's not a lot more to say about him. A great shooter, great leader, great player, could run an offense. Didn't get credit for running an offense, but you've seen his career numbers, and he got like 7 assists a game or close to it.
Like 6.5 or higher.
And played, of course, for a high profile franchise. And like we said previously, his contributions after he stopped playing might even be more than his contributions when he played. And that says a ton because he was a multiple-time All-Star Hall of Fame player. They call him the logo for a reason. They call him Mr. Clutch for a reason. I call him number 4 for a reason. He's on my list at number 4.
Nice.
And then I should go to number 3 as well?
Yeah.
This one was tough, and my younger viewers, they're going to be kind of upset by this probably.
Okay.
This is where I'm putting Mr. Steph Curry.
Okay.
The challenge for me with Steph is we all know the shot making. We all know the dedication to the game. We all know the ball handling and the winning, the clutch shot making. But is he truly what I would call a quintessential pure point guard?
Okay.
Some people don't subtract from that on their list, and I'm not arguing if you don't. But for me, it's hard for me to see him as a pure point guard. But because he's so good at what he does, it still puts him at number 3. It's a compliment to him. If he weren't as good as what he does, then he'd probably be 7, 8, 9 because he's not, in my eyes, a real point guard.
Gotcha.
So it's not knocking him at all. And just know he's a lot like the Reggie Millers back in the day. Again, that was a 2 guard, but makes my point kind of. You have to run to guard him because he's constant motion.
Always.
He's tenacious. He doesn't back down. If he were bigger and a better defender, he'd be higher on the list and probably unstoppable.
Can you imagine if he were 6'5", 215 with his skill set?
Yeah, he'd be. He's tough to stop now. He might be the best player in the world if he had that size and strength. But he's my number 3. And again, if you make the argument for 1 or 2, not going to yell too much at you.
Yeah.
But he's my number 3.
Okay, so you will yell at him, just not too much.
Not too much. Exactly.
Okay.
You do listen.
What'd you say? Yeah. All right, I'm gonna do my number 4, my number 3, my number 2. At number 4, and there will be some disagreement about me putting this guy ahead of John Stockton, and I understand. I'm going to do my best to explain why, even if you disagree. At number 4, I do have Russell Westbrook. 6'3", 200 pounds. He's in his 16th season. 9-time All-Star. Two-time All-Star Game MVP. Led the league in scoring twice. Led the league in assists 3 times. League MVP 2016, 2017. He does have the career record with 198 triple-doubles. Averaged a triple-double for a full season 4 times in 5 seasons. His current season statistics so far, as of this morning, 11.3 points, 5.2 rebounds, 4.5 assists per game. So he's not at a point where he's still dominant. I will admit that, and that did factor into my thinking. His career averages 21.8 points, 7.2 rebounds, 8.2 assists per game. As I said previously, if you told me you think John Stockton's number 1, I won't get too offended. We can talk about it, and I can understand why you would say that. I can understand some people saying Westbrook don't quite deserve to be this high. Here's my reasons. I could talk about the athleticism and the stats and all that. My biggest reason, and maybe I place more value on this than some people do, the man has recorded 198 career triple-doubles. Oscar Robertson had the record for a long time. Mm-hmm. There's some other great players that have over 100. We've mentioned Jason Kidd, LeBron James, Nikola Jokic on previous episodes. Just to give a comparison and not to insult anybody, Michael Jordan had 28 career triple-doubles. He was phenomenal, don't get me wrong. But Westbrook has 198. We can say what we want to say about him. We can say, oh, he's selfish. You don't lead the league in assists 3 times if you're selfish. You don't average a triple-double and rack up 198 triple-doubles if you're truly selfish. You may think he doesn't play the way you want him to sometimes. I cannot get on board with saying he's a selfish player when you've dished out that many assists. The very nature of an assist is to be unselfish, and he has averaged 8.2 assists per game for his career. And I'll wrap this up on Westbrook, but talking about the career triple-double record, and some people will disagree with this as well. My opinion, that's the most impressive career stat in all of sports.
I would definitely disagree.
Yeah, a lot of people do, and that's okay. But here's my reason for saying it. A lot of people talk about Joe DiMaggio's 56-game hitting streak. And not to take away from that, but here's my point. Agree or disagree. DiMaggio had a base hit or more, at minimum a base hit for 56 straight games. Somebody could go 1 for 4 in 57 straight games and break that record. I'm not saying DiMaggio hit 250 during that streak.
Right.
But to break it, somebody could do that. You don't rack up 198 triple-doubles without being good in 3 separate categories per game that many times. That's why I think it's the most impressive career record, because you can't just be good at 1 or 2 aspects of a game. You got to play at a high level on 3 of the most important statistics in that sport. That's why I place that high of a value on it. So there's my case for Russell Westbrook. And I'll say this later, but I'll go ahead and say it now. Disagree? Put it in the comments. I want to hear people think. I mean, seriously, I want to hear, other people's reasons for saying he's not in there. But if I've already answered your reason, you can still put it. But, refer to the video. All right, my number 3, and here's where it did get extremely difficult. But my number 3 is actually the same as Talmadge's number 3, Wardell Stephen Curry II. He's got such a cool name, I just wanted to say it all, kind of like I do with Talmadge Roger Fernando III. Curry, 6'2", 185. He's in his 15th season. He's led the league in steals once. He's led the league in scoring twice. 2-time league MVP, back-to-back. First unanimous MVP in league history. Finals MVP 2022. Highest free throw percentage in league history, 91%. Single season record for most three-pointers made, 402 in 2015-2016. That's more than most teams used to hit.
Right.
Also, career record for most three-pointers made, 3,651.
And growing.
And I was going to say, he could hit 5 more tonight or 10 more tonight. Yeah. Current season statistics thus far, 27.8 points, 4.3 rebounds, 5.1 assists per game. Career averages 24.8 points, 4.7 rebounds, 1.5 steals, and 6.4 assists per game. He's 35 years old. He had a lot of ankle injuries early in his career. He's currently averaging almost 28 points a game. Like we said with Kevin Durant, there's no signs of him slowing down.
Not at all.
The one, if we're going to split hairs, and we have to when it gets down to this, I'll agree with you on why I maybe can't rank him higher. He plays the point guard position, but it's only because of his height. That doesn't take away from him. He's phenomenal. And if we were talking personal favorite players of all time, he's probably in my top 5. I do like the guy a lot. Think he's just phenomenal. The way he can shoot, he's not just a catch and shoot guy. A lot of these other great shooters, that was their thing. He can beat you off the dribble. Yeah. He can step back and hit the 3. He can catch off the screen and hit a 3.
Stop and pop.
He can stop off the fast break and shoot from 40 feet away just because he feels like it and rip it. Yeah. The guy's just phenomenal. But 6.4 assists per game in his career. He's a good passer and he's unselfish. But he's not a pure point guard like a lot of these other guys, and that is why it's a little harder to rank him higher. But to your point, he's number 3 despite that.
Right.
That shows how good he really, truly is. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do my number 2 now. And if you're a basketball fan, you've been listening, you can probably figure out who my final 2 are.
Right.
At number 2, I do have Oscar Robertson, referred to sometimes as the Big O.
Right.
6'5", 205 pounds. He did play 14 seasons, 12-time All-Star, 3-time All-Star Game MVP, Rookie of the Year, 60-61. Led the league in assists 6 times. First player ever to average a triple-double for a full season. Still second in career triple-doubles with 181. Career averages of 25.7 points, 7.5 rebounds, 9.5 assists. Truly a great all-around player. And as I've said with some other guys, 25.7 points a game, 14 seasons, never had a three-point line. This was a guy that could control the game, could score when he needed to, great passer, 7.5 rebounds for a point guard that was 6'5" for a career. Very impressive. Not really much more that I'm going to say about him. All right, Talmadge, you give us your number 2. And if we happen to have the same number 1, we'll go like we have on our last couple of lists.
I'm pretty sure we do because we have the same number 3, the same number 2.
Okay.
My number 2 is also Oscar Robertson. Not a lot to add to from what you've already said. I will say this. He was Mr. Triple-Double. We didn't know what that was when he was playing. He basically created it. That shows how good he was. And had good size for a point guard back then, too. And I think he took advantage of that. Obviously, a great passer. Before my time as far as seeing him play, but from the footage I've seen, he's like a lot of great players. You could never speed him up. He was going to play at his pace.
Controlling the pace of the game.
No matter what. Even his own specific movements or shot taking or when he handled the ball. If you pressed him, if you got up in his face, you weren't going to speed him up. If this was the speed he was going to play at, if this is what he determined his team needed to do, that's how they were going to play. And that, to me, is the true mark of not only a good point guard, but a great player. A lot of the great players today, people like James Harden, you can't speed him up. He's going to play at his pace.
Yeah.
Kawhi Leonard, he's going to play at his pace.
He's going to, yeah.
And he's like the first player I actually saw. And then Magic was probably the next. But growing up, I didn't see Robertson play live, but just watching video, I'm like, okay, that's what they mean when they say
control the pace of the game.
And plus, you can't speed him up individually, not even for his team. If he wants to walk the ball up the court, you could come up for the full court press. He's still going to walk the ball up. You can't speed him up.
And you weren't going to get the ball from him hardly ever. So not only was he going to play at his pace, you weren't going to take him out of his game. He was still going to succeed at his pace.
He was going to do what he was going to do. And so, that's my number 2. So I have a sneaking suspicion.
I have a feeling we might have the same number 1. On the count of 3, let's announce our number 1 point guards of all time. 1, 2, 3.
Kevin
Muggsy
Porter.
Bogues. Oh, all right. Well, surprisingly, we have different ones. It is, in fact, without looking at your list, I can indubitably concur. It is Irvin Magic Johnson. Go ahead and kick us off with a discussion about him, Talmadge.
Winner. When it mattered, infectious charisma. People followed him. When he spoke, you listened. As far as how he played on the court, again, like I just said, you're not going to speed him up. Great vision, great size to see over you. Worked on his game every year. He wasn't a great shooter when he first came into the league. He never became what I would call a great shooter.
Yeah, I
but
agree.
he had a year where if he didn't lead the league in free throw shooting, he was amongst the league leaders, and he was always average at that. But he said, I got to get better at shooting because I'm giving up 2, 3, 4 points a game on my points per game average and my team.
And it's costing us
because
wins.
I'm not hitting free throws. He did that. The ultimate winner. I mean, we can go over the numbers, but and it's hard to say this because I don't want to put anybody down who comes after him, like Steph right now.
Right.
But he's one of those players. I can't imagine someone ever taking the number 1 point guard spot on my list away from him. Now, again, for all I know, there's somebody right now that's in the 4th grade that in 20 years is going to be. But I'm just saying.
20 years from now, we're both going to go, man, this guy, we didn't know.
I got to see it.
Yeah.
He's one of those where it's going to be hard for anybody to replace him.
He's the heavyweight champion. It's got to be taken from him. We're not going to assume it could. Yeah.
You ain't kidding.
Well, and I'll add to that. He did play 13 seasons. Could have played longer. Retired, not because his game wasn't there. 12-time All-Star. All-Rookie 79-80. Didn't win Rookie of the Year. Larry Bird was great. I'm not going to say he didn't deserve it. Just still hard for me to deal with because Magic is my favorite player. All-Star Game MVP twice. Led the league in steals twice. Led the league in assists only 4 times. But again, he played in the era of John Stockton, Isaiah Thomas. 3-time regular season MVP. 3-time finals MVP. 3rd in career triple-doubles with 138. Career averages 19.5 points, 7.2 rebounds, 11.2 assists per game. He retired as all-time leader in assists. Still has the highest assists per game average in a career. And there's just never been another point guard like him. Like you said, it came into the league. Think how good he had to be for the coaches to even use him at point guard.
Right.
At that time, it was unfathomable. Young man, you're the height of a power forward. You're not real big, but we're going to put you there. Or maybe small forward. Point guard was, I'm going to do, like Jim Mora would say, point guard? Point guard?
And nobody
but he played
gave it
there.
a second thought.
No, because once you saw what he could do, you just knew. And the Lakers had Norm Nixon, who was a pretty good point guard already.
He's so good, Norm Nixon.
They moved him. Well, they moved him to shooting guard.
Yeah,
and he came off the bench
but you knew he was going to.
Yeah, you knew he wasn't going to stay too much longer once Magic came along. And just the ball handling, the vision, like you said. And to me, he's the best person I've ever seen at controlling the pace of the game. He could push the ball, push that fast break, or he could slow it down and say, nah, we're gonna take the air out of them on their own court and slow this down. He did something one time in the playoffs, one of his last years. I think it was the West Conference Finals against Portland in 91. And it sounds like such a funny thing, but I was so impressed by it. He got a rebound. And there was like less than 10 seconds. And the Lakers were up either by 2 or 3. Rather than hold it and get fouled and hope he could hit them both, which he probably could have, he did something I've never seen anybody else do to this day. He got the rebound, and before the defense could get there, he just lofted it over him, threw it into the front court, and let the ball bounce and roll, and wasted like 7 seconds.
Clock, yeah.
And Portland had no timeouts left. So they then had to take the ball, inbound the ball, try to go length of the court in 3 seconds, and they didn't score. And when I saw that, I was like, that's why this guy's so brilliant. Who would have else ever even have thought to do that? So all those reasons and more we could go into. He's my number one point guard of all time. So, again, I'm sure there'll be some disagreements with where we have some people ranked. We had a lot of overlap and some that weren't. Who's some guys that were difficult for you to leave off?
I don't have many of those on this list, maybe, but I would say that what surprised, Tim Hardaway, because he was a personal favorite of mine. I'm not saying he deserved to be on the list, but I loved him as a player.
He's worth a mention.
And I liked him an awful lot. But I want to go back to something. Instead of talking about somebody who wasn't on the list, this is the first time, because we've done these lists a lot.
Yeah.
And even if we disagree, they're fairly close. We were really close on this one with only one difference. I had Kuzi, you had Westbrook.
Yeah.
So they were really close there. But the Westbrook one, especially to have him so high, I must admit, that surprises me a ton because he misses a lot of shots. His stats don't lead to anything. And I'll say this. When he became a Rocket, I have to admit, I got a new respect for him because one thing he is a leader.
Yeah.
They follow him, and that surprise. I had always heard that, well, he's in Oklahoma City with no Kevin Durant. Who are they going to follow?
Of course they're going to gravitate to him.
But I'm like, no, I'll give you this. He does have this thing where people believe in him and they follow him. And he is the most athletic point guard I've ever seen.
Yeah.
So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he's not a Hall of Famer. He's not a good player.
Right.
But to have him that high at the point guard position where your job is to control the offense, kind of high for me because he turns the ball over a ton. He can't shoot
he's
at all.
He's not a great shooter at all, yeah.
And that's primarily what point guards do. And we talked about, he's a good passer, but if it doesn't lead to anything, what has it led to?
But it has led to a lot of assists, as I just went over.
Well, and the year that Durant left, he averaged a triple-double. Wasn't he supposed to? He controls the ball. They had no other scorers on the team. People knew. People actually predicted with Durant gone, this guy might average a triple-double. And he did it, but they finished 6th in the West, got knocked out in the first round, led to nothing. So that's my only argument.
Yeah, I get what you're saying if it doesn't lead to team success. But by that logic, if we're going to say, well, shouldn't he average a triple-double? He's got the ball in his hands. Why didn't any of these other point guards have 198 career triple-doubles? They're all controlling the game.
Because they don't put the value on it. That year with Russ, people said he was missing shots on purpose to get the rebound.
To get his own rebound.
So,
and he may have.
They didn't have to get a triple-double.
Yeah, well, and he may have done some of that. I can't say if he did or didn't. But for me, agree or disagree, anybody's got 198 career triple-doubles. I can't. That's something I can't ignore. Ranking him that high, it was tough ranking him ahead of Stockton, I will admit. Because, again, you could say Stockton's the best. There's no doubt about that. So I understand why some people would disagree, and I knew that when I made the list. But
I'm saying of all the people, all the positions, that's the one that I'm like, that surprises me the most. Knowing the way that you look at basketball, that one surprised. The other one that was close was the Charles Barkley. To have him that high, but I understood that a little more. This one, and I don't mind him being on the list, 8, 9, 10, 11, somewhere, but 4, I mean, that's high.
So even with what I talked about, the triple-doubles, you still are
because like you said, the triple-double doesn't mean much to me. It
so that's the key factor. I place a lot more value on that.
You place all your value on
well, not all of it.
That's all that and his athleticism and the triple-double, that's all that separates him. That's all.
Well, yes. Oh, well, but here's my point. If I placed all my value on the triple-double, he'd be number 1, not number 4.
Well, only because Magic's your favorite player. So you might get me if you say number 2, but you won't get me at number 1 because no one's passing Magic for you. But I get your point.
But you understand where I'm going.
Yes.
All right. Well, if you think we left anybody out that deserves to be on here, or you think we got people out of place, if you think Russell Westbrook's too high on my list, let us know in the comments. If you like the video, please like it. If you haven't subscribed already, please do so. It'll enable me to continue to bring you this type of content, and it'll alert you. It will alert you. Sometimes I talk a little bit fast. You may have noticed this. It will alert you when I upload new videos. Now, Talmadge, before we go, I do have a question for you.
You always do.
Who do you think could juggle 3 tennis balls the longest whilst riding a unicycle? Mr. Miyagi, not Pat Morita, but the character, Mr. Miyagi, or former Buffalo Bills special teams great Steve Tasker?
I'm going to say neither, and I'm going to go with the Fonz, Arthur Fonzarelli.
So they're in a competition. He's just going to come rolling in and beat them both.
Exactamundo.
And what's he going to say when he beats them? Hey! All right. Well, hey, that is an acceptable answer, because anything you say could be an acceptable answer. All right. Thank you all so much for joining us today. For Talmadge Roger Varnado III, I am Jared Johnson, the Jared J. Hope you all have a great week, and hope I see you back here real soon.
But
yeah.
Westbrook